The call came in the middle of a meeting that could have ended in bloodshed. Sam Carter, the most feared man in the city, stood over a digital map showing his empire's latest conquest. His voice was cold steel. The docks are ours by midnight. Anyone who tries to renegotiate gets a visit. The kind that doesn't end with a handshake. Then the burner phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Sam's jaw clenched. Protocol had been shattered. He snatched up the phone, expecting a security breach, a raid, betrayal. But the voice on the other end wasn't one of his lieutenants. It was Lori, his maid, a woman who had cleaned his home for 7 years and never said more than necessary. Her voice wasn't frantic. It was worse. It was a sound of someone witnessing a soul die in real time. "Sir, please come home now," Lori whispered, urgency cutting through his armor like a blade. "She'll wreck her life. You have to stop her." Sam had heard fear before. He knew the sound of lies, danger, betrayal. But this voice was shaking in a way that made his blood run cold. This wasn't about an enemy at the gates. This was about destruction from within. He dismissed his men with a single gesture and ran. The drive home was silent terror. Sam's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. He'd built his empire on violence and control, a fortress of protection. What enemy had breached his walls? He arrived at the mansion in under 8 minutes. The moment he stepped through those mahogany doors, he knew something was catastrophically wrong. No music, no footsteps, just silence. Heavy, suffocating silence that pressed against his chest like a physical weight. Lori materialized in the shadows near the stairs, her face pale, eyes red, not from fear of him, but from witnessing something unspeakable. "Where is she?" Sam's voice was lethal calm, the kind that usually preceded a funeral. Lori pointed toward the master sitting room, her hand trembling. "She's in there, sir. She hasn't moved. She's just gone." Sam moved down the hallway, expecting chaos, shattered glass, hysterical tears, a dramatic confrontation. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for what he saw when he entered that perfect, opulent room he had created for his wife. He froze in the doorway. His elegant, perfectly composed wife, Sherry, wasn't screaming. She wasn't fighting. She was sitting on the floor in a patch of winter sunlight, wearing a silk robe that cost more than most people's cars, but it looked like a funeral shroud. She wasn't crying. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, and she was staring at nothing with eyes that surrendered to an invisible executioner. The shock hit Sam like a bullet he never saw coming. In that moment, he realized something that would haunt him forever. The enemy he'd been hunting on the streets had been living in his home all along, and that enemy was him. Stay with me until the end, because what Sam does next will shatter everything he's built and reveal the darkest truth about love, control, and the golden cages we build for the people we claim to protect. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories coming. Now, let's get started. Sam Carter didn't become the most powerful criminal in the city by accident. He built his empire on one unbreakable rule: absolute security. After surviving a childhood of chaos and violence, he vowed that nothing he loved would ever be harmed. His fortress existed to make that vow reality. When he met Sherry, she was everything his dark world wasn't. She was a vibrant art student, full of chaotic color and infectious laughter. She painted messy, beautiful canvases that made no sense to Sam's ordered mind, but captivated his heart completely. She was the one bright, beautiful thing in his world of shadows, and he instantly placed her on a pedestal made of glass. He didn't just marry her for love. He married her to protect her from what he called the ugliness of the real world. The mansion became her new home, his golden cage, guarded by biometric scanners and men who never slept. 30 staff members, including Lori. Designer clothes that cost small fortunes. An indoor pool. A private art studio with every supply imaginable. Everything a woman could ever want. Everything except freedom. Sam's protection came with invisible chains. He never allowed Sherry to go anywhere alone. He screened every phone call. He convinced her to drop out her art degree, claiming the environment was too vulgar and dangerous for someone as delicate as her. He didn't lock the doors. He locked her entire world. The first 6 months were honeymoon bliss. Sherry was grateful for the stability, the safety, the luxury. But as months turned into years, the space Sam left for her to simply exist as herself began to shrink. She was transforming into exactly what he wanted. The perfect, silent, beautiful accessory. And Sam, too busy controlling his empire, convinced himself that her silence meant contentment. He told himself she was happy. He had to believe it, because the alternative was unthinkable. He was building her prison one golden brick at a time and calling it love. Lori was a woman who had perfected the art of invisibility. In 7 years of service, she'd learned to see everything and say nothing. She'd witnessed Sam Carter order brutal things with a calm voice and watched violence unfold with cold efficiency. But what she witnessed happening to Sherry was more disturbing than any bloodshed. It was a slow, heartbreaking decay, a murder without a weapon. It started with the small things. Lori noticed that Sherry stopped painting. The art studio, once vibrant with color and life, became a museum of untouched canvas and abandoned dreams. The brushes dried out. The paints hardened in their tubes. She saw how Sherry's hands trembled whenever Sam called to check in, not because she feared him physically, but because every call was another reminder of the leash around her neck. Lori watched Sherry wander the magnificent rooms like a ghost, touching expensive fabrics and cold marble, always gravitating toward the panoramic windows. She would stand there for hours, staring out at the city below, searching for a crack in the glass, a flaw through which she could escape. When Sam bought Sherry yet another piece of diamond jewelry, Lori noticed how quickly Sherry would tuck it away, her eyes blank and hollow. The gifts weren't tokens of love. They were additional shackles of obligation, reminders of everything she owed him. The maid saw what Sam refused to see. Sherry wasn't just sad. She was disappearing, erasing herself piece by piece to survive in a cage made of gold and good intentions. And Lori knew that if someone didn't intervene soon, there would be nothing left of the vibrant woman who once laughed, Sam painted, and lived. The man who controlled an entire city's underworld was completely blind inside his own walls. He'd built this fortress because he was terrified of losing her. The same terror that had defined his violent childhood, when he'd been powerless to protect anything. His possessiveness wore the mask of devotion, and he believed his own lies. When Sherry once delicately mentioned volunteering at a small gallery, Sam had laughed, a booming, protective sound that filled the room. "My love, you don't need to worry about such tedious things. That's what I'm here for. You deserve to be pampered, not exhausted by the outside world." He interpreted her growing silence as dignity. Her detachment became proof that she understood her place, that she appreciated his protection. Every time he caught a flicker of sadness in her eyes, he didn't ask what was wrong. He solved it the only way he knew how. He bought her a new car, doubled the security staff, added another layer of protection. He was treating the symptoms of a disease he was causing. Sam wanted a saint in his golden cage, and he convinced himself he'd created one. He was a hero in his own story, the protector, the provider. The thought that he might be the villain never even crossed his mind. After all, how could love be wrong? The control tightened like a noose, so gradually that Sam didn't even notice he was strangling her. The incident with the phone call was the first major crack. An old friend from Sherry's college days somehow found her number. Lori witnessed a transformation on Sherry's face during that brief, whispered conversation. A sudden return of the vibrant woman who used to exist. Her eyes lit up. Her laugh rang through the house for the first time in months. 2 days later, Sam's security team installed a new communications filtering system. He didn't mention the phone call directly. Instead, over dinner, he said casually, "I've improved the security protocols, darling. You were receiving far too many nuisance calls. I'm protecting your peace." Sherry's face went slack. That night, Lori found her in the art studio, methodically tearing up a postcard a friend had sent, her movements mechanical and empty, like a robot following programming. But the worst incident came with the French lessons. Sherry had secretly begun taking evening French classes online. For a few weeks, Lori saw something miraculous, purpose returning to Sherry's eyes. Focus, a reason to wake up in the morning. Then Sam discovered the laptop open to the language learning site. He didn't yell. He didn't even seem angry. He simply arrived home the next day with a brand new, customized tablet, already programmed with classical music and historical documentaries. "That old thing is too slow, sweetheart," he said, kissing her forehead with genuine affection. "I want you to have the best. Stick to the classics, darling. They're much better for your tranquility." The next morning, the old laptop was gone, removed by staff, disappeared. Sherry never touched the new tablet. It sat on the desk like a tombstone, marking the death of another piece of who she used to be. The message was devastatingly clear. Sam was replacing her interests with his approved distractions. He was rewriting her personality to match his vision of perfection. And with each replacement, Sherry faded a little more. The final breaking point came in an envelope. It wasn't a threat from an enemy. It wasn't blackmail. It was an acceptance letter from an exclusive gallery across the country that wanted to feature one of Sherry's old paintings in an upcoming show. Somehow, years ago, before Sam had locked down every aspect of her life, she'd submitted work, and they remembered her. When Sherry opened that letter, Lori saw her hand shake violently. But these weren't tears of joy. They were tears of profound, crushing fear, because Sherry knew exactly what this meant. Another dream Sam would destroy in the name of protection. That afternoon, Sam came home early, elated. He'd just closed a massive deal that would expand his territory. "I need a drink, Sherry. This victory belongs to us," he announced, rushing to embrace her with genuine excitement. Sherry pulled back slightly, clutching the folded envelope like a lifeline. "Sam, there's something important. I got a letter." He cut her off, his eyes sparkling with pride and self-satisfaction. "Wonderful, darling. Tell me about it later. I have a surprise for you first." He grabbed her hands, practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "I just bought the entire block next to us. We're going to build a new, larger wall. Complete privacy. A true kingdom where no one will ever bother us again." He sealed her fate with his own excitement. Sherry stared at him, and Lori watched as every ounce of hope drained from her face. The new wall meant no escape. The ultimate security meant the ultimate cage. Forever. Sam didn't notice. He was too busy planning their perfect future. What happened next made Lori's blood run cold. Sherry didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She simply, methodically, tore the acceptance letter into tiny, tiny pieces. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, as she shredded her last connection to her old self and let the confetti of her future fall onto the expensive Persian rug. Then she swept up the pieces, threw them away, and walked to the sitting room where she sat down on the floor and stopped moving. She stopped everything. That's when Lori knew. If Sherry didn't escape soon, she would completely erase herself to survive. And that wouldn't be survival at all. That would be death wearing a silk robe. If you're still watching, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. These stories take time to research and create, and your support means everything. Plus, you won't want to miss what happens next. Trust me. Lori retreated to the kitchen, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She'd served this family for 7 years. She'd accepted the paycheck, followed the rules, and remained silent through countless questionable situations. That was a deal. That was survival. But this was different. This wasn't about Sam's business victims or criminal enterprises. This was about the slow, suffocating soul murder of an innocent woman who had done nothing wrong except fall in love with the wrong man. Lori knew that calling Sam, breaking his ultimate rule about household interruptions during business hours, could cost her everything: her job, her safety, possibly even her life, if he interpreted it as betrayal. But the image of Sherry sitting on that floor, destroying her own dream with empty eyes, pushed her past fear into a territory she'd never explored. Courage. She retrieved the burner phone with shaking hands. She dialed once. Voicemail. Her courage almost failed. She dialed again, her breath coming in short gasps. This time, Sam answered, his voice sharp with irritation. "Lori, what the hell is going on? I told you never to." "Sir, please." Lori managed, Her voice barely a whisper, but weighted with 7 years of witnessed pain. She's wrecking her life. It's not an enemy. It's not danger. It's the quiet. You have to see it. It's happening right now. And if you don't come home, you're going to lose her forever. Sam didn't understand the nuance. He couldn't. But the raw desperation in Laurie's voice, a voice that had never once been raised in panic, terrified him more than any threat he'd ever faced. "I'm coming," he said, cutting the call. Laurie set down the phone and prayed she'd done the right thing. Prayed that Sam Carter, the man who controlled everything through force, could somehow find it in himself to surrender control for once in his life. Sam burst through the doors of his mansion, expecting war. He expected a suicide attempt, a furious departure note, shattered windows, blood, chaos. Something that matched the panic in Laurie's voice. Instead, he found silence. Oppressive, tomb-like silence that made his ears ring. He moved toward the master sitting room like a man walking to his own execution. Every instinct screamed that something was catastrophically wrong, but he couldn't identify the threat. When he entered the room, he found Sherry sitting on the floor near the tall, unused easel he'd bought her years ago. She was facing away from him, her posture one of absolute, quiet surrender. The only evidence of destruction was a faint dusting of paper confetti near the Persian rug. "Sherry," he said, his voice husky, all his professional calm shattered. She turned her head slowly, and when her eyes met his, Sam Carter, the man who had stared down killers, who had ordered executions without flinching, felt his blood turn to ice. Her eyes were empty, completely, devastatingly empty. They registered his presence but didn't react. It was like looking into a window where all the lights had been permanently shut off. The woman he loved was gone, and a beautiful ghost sat in her place. He noticed details he'd been too busy to see before. The nearly invisible bruise on her wrist from where he gripped her too tightly last week in a moment of possessive fear. The way she held her body, not braced for pain, but expecting nothing at all, resigned to emptiness. He finally understood what Laurie couldn't put into words. Sherry wasn't trying to run away from him. She was running away from being herself, because being herself in his cage was too painful to endure. The enemy wasn't outside the walls. The enemy was a man reflected in his wife's dead eyes. Sam knelt beside her, forcing himself to be smaller, less threatening, less like the monster he was beginning to realize he'd become. "Sherry, I'm here now," he said softly, reaching for her hand. "Tell me what happened. Did someone hurt you? Did someone threaten you?" Sherry finally spoke, her voice flat and emotionless, like she was reading from a script. "No, Sam. No one hurt me." She paused, her gaze drifting to the expansive view of the city he controlled, the empire he'd built. "You just protected me to death." The words hit him like a physical blow. "I don't understand. I gave you everything. Security, safety, the best life money can buy. Why did Laurie say you were wrecking your life?" Sherry looked directly at him, and the emptiness in her eyes was the most damning thing he'd ever faced. More damning than any judge, any rival, any enemy who'd ever threatened him. "Because I am wrecking it. Sam, this life you built for me, it's not a fortress. It's a cage. A beautiful, expensive, suffocating cage." Her voice remained flat, devoid of anger, which somehow made it worse. "You seal me in one gift, one guard, one rule at a time. You replace my friends with your security team. You replace my passions with your approved hobbies. You replace my choices with your control. All for my safety." She gestured vaguely around the opulent room. "I'm not a person anymore, Sam. I'm a painting you hang on the wall, a possession you protect, a trophy you polish." She pointed to where the shredded paper had been. "I destroyed that letter. Not because I was angry at the gallery. Not because I didn't want the opportunity." Her voice cracked for the first time. "I destroyed it because I realized I didn't have the strength to fight you anymore. The only way to survive your protection is to stop being me, to erase every part of myself that doesn't fit your vision of the perfect wife." Tears finally began to fall down her cheeks. "That's what wrecking my life means, Sam. I'm doing it to myself methodically, piece by piece, because you left me no other choice. Because fighting you is exhausting, and losing to you is inevitable, and the only power I have left is to destroy myself before you can finish the job." Sam was reeling. He was the most feared man in the city. He could command armies and control markets. He could end lives with a phone call. But he couldn't control the emptiness in his wife's eyes, and he couldn't undo the damage his love had caused. "I love you, Sherry," he said desperately, his voice breaking. "Everything I did, every decision I made, I did it out of love, to protect you." "That's not love, Sam," Sherry whispered, her tears falling faster now. "That's possession. Love gives freedom. Love trusts. Love allows growth and change and mistakes. Possession takes all of that away and calls it safety. You don't love me, Sam. You love the idea of owning something beautiful that can't leave you." The truth crashed over him like a tsunami. His fear of losing her had caused him to destroy the very thing he loved most: her spirit, her joy, herself. He had created the ultimate security system, built the highest walls, installed the best locks, only to discover that the greatest threat was a man staring back at him in the mirror. Sam stood slowly, his legs unsteady, his face etched with a pain greater than any bullet wound, any knife cut, any physical injury he'd ever endured. His world of order and control had just been declared worthless. His entire life's work, meaningless. "Lori," Sam said, his voice thick with emotion, but carrying a new kind of authority. Not the authority of power, but the authority of sacrifice. "Could you please stay with Sherry? Make her some tea. Do not leave her side." He waited for Lori to enter and sit beside Sherry. Then he walked out of the room like a man in a trance. He didn't go to his office to plan revenge. He didn't call his lawyers to find a way to keep control. He didn't order his security team to increase surveillance. Instead, he went to the security room and called his head of security. "Tear down the fences on the north perimeter. All of them. Effective immediately. I want gaps in the walls where she can see the street, where she can walk out if she chooses." Then he called his lawyer. "Prepare new documents. Sherry gets full access to the offshore account in her name. The apartment in Paris that's sitting empty. Complete legal and financial separation from the business. No restrictions, no conditions, no strings. She needs to be free to leave with everything she needs to start over." He made a dozen more calls, systematically dismantling the prison he'd built, brick by golden brick. Hours later, he returned to the sitting room. Sherry was still there, but Lori's presence had brought a small measure of warmth back into the space. Sherry was holding a cup of tea, her hands no longer perfectly still. Sam knelt in front of her again. "I'm sorry, Sherry," he said simply. "I was wrong. About everything. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only protecting myself. Protecting myself from the fear of losing you. And in trying to keep you safe, I became the thing you needed protection from." He took her hands gently, carefully, as if she might shatter. "I can't ask you to stay. I don't deserve to ask you to stay. But I can promise you this. The walls are coming down. You're free. The car is yours. No driver unless you want one. The pilot is on standby if you want to go to Paris tomorrow or anywhere else. No guards following you. No phone tracking. No questions." His voice broke. "It's your choice now. Maybe for the first time since you married me. It's actually your choice." Sherry stared at him, seeing the true Sam Carter for the first time. The man beneath the armor. The boy who'd been so terrified of loss that he'd become a tyrant in the name of love. She didn't leave that day. She didn't make promises. She simply nodded, acknowledging that something fundamental had shifted. 6 months later, the mansion felt different. The high walls around the perimeter remained. Sam was still a powerful man with real enemies. But the inner walls were gone. Sherry could come and go as she pleased. She was attending a local art class 3 times a week, driving herself in a small, non-armored car that she'd chosen herself. She'd reconnected with old friends. She'd submitted new work to galleries. Some days she came home energized and happy, excited to tell Sam about her progress. Other days she came home exhausted and frustrated, complaining about difficult critiques or failed paintings. Sam listened to all of it with a hunger he'd never known before, because her frustration meant she was living. Her complaints meant she was choosing her own path. Her joy meant she was free. They were rebuilding their relationship from the ground up, slowly, carefully. Some nights she slept in the guest room. Some nights she chose to stay with him. He never asked which it would be. He let her decide. Sam was still the feared boss of the city's underworld. His business hadn't changed, but he had changed in ways that mattered more than any empire. He learned that true power isn't control. True power is the strength to let go. He learned that love isn't about building walls. It's about opening doors. And he learned, most importantly, that the greatest threat isn't the enemy in the streets. It's the enemy you become when fear masquerades as love. One evening, as Sherry returned from her art class, laughing about something that happened, Sam found Lori in the kitchen. "Thank you," he said simply. Lori looked at him, understanding exactly what he meant. "I'm glad I called, sir. I'm glad you listened." "You saved her life," Sam said quietly. "And in doing that, you saved mine too. Because that terrified, desperate phone call, 'She'll wreck her life,' had been the wake-up call that shattered his delusions and forced him to see the truth, that the man he become was destroying the woman he loved. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you were wrong, tear down the walls you built, and give freedom to the person you try to cage. That's the real story. Not about a mafia boss who protected his empire, but about a man who learned, almost too late, that the only thing worth protecting is someone's right to be themselves, even if it means letting them go. If this story touched you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep, emotional stories that make you think. Drop a comment below telling me, have you ever felt trapped by someone's protection? Let's talk about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.